Hanbit, and I'm a pastry chef from Korea. Hi everybody, it's Hanbit. 안녕하세요, 조한빛입니다. Today, I'm going to show you how to make pie crust, or let's say the pie dough. I have an old video where I showed you how to make tart crust, the tart shell, and many people have watched it. It was very popular and many people have said that it was very helpful. And I was meant to upload a pie crust video shortly after the tart video, but I know it's taken a while. But better late than never, so I'm going to show you how to make a pie crust. Once you have a go-to recipe for tart shells or pie crust, you don't really tweak it or change it because you won't need to. And so hopefully you've enjoyed my previous tart shell video. I tried to show you a lot of techniques and explain quite a lot behind it. So in this pie video as well, in this pie crust video, I'll show you and explain a lot in detail. So I guess the first question is about the difference between pies and tarts. Sometimes you would call pies as tarts and vice versa, but as long as you know the difference between pies and tarts, it's fine. And from the looks of it, yes, tarts look different to pies. Tarts look like this, tart shells look like this, and pies look like this. So from the looks of it, tarts look much more dense, hard, and pies look a bit more flaky, right? It looks lighter, right? And yes, so talking about the texture, tarts are dense, relatively dense compared to pies, and they are crispy. They're meant to be hard and crispy at the same time, but not like hard, like rock hard, right? So you can say that tarts have a sturdier kind of structure. So tarts are meant to be crisp and firm. Now, going over to pies, pies are meant to be flaky. They might have layers, well, that depends on the recipe, but they're meant to be flaky. So when I talk about flaky and layers, then that might lead the conversation to puff pastry, but now that's a whole different world. That's where you start folding your dough and you create layers on purpose, and the layers create puff pastry. But with pies, you might have some sort of layers, but it's just meant to be flaky, and if you have layers, it's great, but if not, then it's fine. So that's the difference between tarts and pies. But then the next question, well, the question that I get a lot from my students is what's the difference between a typical pie crust, a pie dough, a pie recipe, right? And pâte brisée. So when we talk about pâte brisée, you might have heard of this because it's mentioned a lot in French pastry. But when you talk about pâte brisée, then I need to bring up pâte sucrée and pâte sablée. So when we talk about tarts or pies in French pastry, you have three different types of doughs. You have pâte sucrée, pâte sablée, and pâte brisée. Pâte sablée and pâte sucrée are not exactly the same, but just for the purpose of this discussion, I can say that they're similar because those two are very different to pâte brisée in terms of the recipe. When you talk about a tart shell recipe, I guess pâte sucrée and pâte sablée is what you would think of. And that's what I usually, not always, but that's what I usually refer to. And the tart shell video that I uploaded a while ago is also pâte sablée and pâte sucrée type recipe. Now, pâte brisée is very different because it's usually savory. Well, you almost not put any sugar. You can add just a pinch of sugar, but usually it would be almost savory. And the texture won't be crisp and firm, but it'll be flaky. So to be honest, you can say that pâte brisée is similar to a typical kind of pie recipe that we talk about. But then what would be the difference between a typical pie crust recipe and a pâte brisée recipe? To be honest, nowadays we tweak the recipe all the time, so you might say that they're the same thing. But if I had to talk about the differences, I would say that a typical pie crust would be a bit more flaky, right? And might have a bit more layers. Because if you look at a typical recipe, then a pie crust would have a bit more butter, a bit more water, and that would create that kind of flakiness and the layers. And you probably won't use any egg yolks for a typical pie crust recipe, although you can, right? But you usually won't. You would add, let's say, a pinch of sugar and salt for both pâte brisée and a typical pie crust recipe. So to be honest, you can tweak the recipe. It's completely up to you. It depends on what sort of texture and what sort of flavor you wish. And so I am going to show you my pie recipe. And to be honest, it's a bit of a hybrid between the pâte brisée recipe and the typical pie crust recipe that you know of. So I think it's the best of both worlds. And what I'll do is I'll go over the ingredients and explain my thoughts behind them. Here are the ingredients in front of me. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ingredients. So I'm going to start with the flour, all-purpose flour, butter. I've chopped them up into cubes, and they're cubes of, let's say, around kind of 1.5 to 2 centimeter size. Egg yolks, water, salt, and sugar. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mix all the 4 ingredients here all together, and they're going to be cold. Well, the butter's cold as well. So in terms of making the dough itself, it's super easy because I'm going to put this all in a food processor, and the food processor is going to do all the work. The dough is going to be done in a matter of seconds. And in terms of preparing the ingredients, you want them cold, especially the butter and the water and the egg yolks. You want them to be cold because you don't want the butter to melt. And I'm going to mix all these 4 ingredients together, all together. And I've only separated them out here just to explain them. But typically I would just weigh them out together and just make sure all the salt and the sugar dissolves. And now going back a few steps and talking about the pâte brisée and the typical pie crust recipe, you can see that I've added a bit of egg yolks, which you probably won't see in a pie recipe. And I've realized that adding a bit of egg yolks adds depth in flavor, and I like it. And so I suggest you try it out as well. I'm sure you'll like it. Regarding the butter, there's more butter than you would have for a pâte brisée recipe. So it's actually closer to a typical pie recipe. And I know that some people don't add sugar at all. And here you can see there's not a lot of sugar as a percentage of the total weight. I like adding a bit of sugar. It makes it less bland. It's not going to make it sweet, but it's going to make it less bland. So yes, just add a bit of sugar. It works. I'm just going to mix these 4 ingredients, and then I'm going to add the flour into the food processor, followed by the butter. Food processors are super powerful, so you don't need to keep them on for long. So it's sort of kind of pea-sized, right? So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to add in the liquid. I'm going to add it in 2 additions. So it's coming together, and I'm just going to pulse it once more. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to bring it all together. Great, so just bring everything together into a single dough. Wrap it, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge and keep it there for about a couple of hours. You might see bits of butter, and that's perfectly fine. So now I'm going to put this in the fridge and let it rest for about a couple of hours. Now, you can leave it like this, or if you want the edges cleaner, then what I usually do is I put it in the freezer for, let's say, 10 to 20 minutes, and then I clean the edge. So I'm going to put it in the freezer for a bit, and I'm going to clean the edges, and then I'm going to place weight inside and blind bake it. Great, now I'll blind bake this. Great, so I've blind baked it, looks nice, and yeah, this is how we do it. This time I'm going to show you how to make a large pie. Great, now I'll pre-bake it in the preheated oven. So here's my blind baked, or actually being blind baked pie. It's not fully done yet. Well, it's not fully blind baked yet because halfway, well, midway, I remove the pie waste and then bake it further. Great, now I'm going to bake it further. So here's my pie shell that's just baked. And what I usually do is you would typically be pouring something that's that contains a lot of water, right? You would typically do that. For example, like flan, yeah, the French flan. You would pour pastry cream inside. That contains a lot of water, right? And it does make this pie soggy quickly. So you want a protective layer. And what I do is, while it's hot, I brush egg yolks. But I mean, even if you don't do it right away, it's still fine. Great, so I've shown you how to make small mini pies, well, pie crust, and large pie crust. So yes, it's one of those fundamental skills that are very useful when you're baking. So please practice, and I'm sure you'll be able to do it in no time, right? Just practice a few times, you'll be fine. So hopefully my recipe will become your go-to recipe for pies. Well, now you have the tart recipe, the tart video that I've uploaded a few years back, and now the pie recipe, the pie video. So you will be able to make any sort of tarts or pies that you wish. And I will be uploading quite a few tarts and pie recipes anyway. So I'll see you next time with an amazing recipe. Thank you very much. 감사합니다. For more YouTube videos, please click here. If you want to take a step further with your baking and pastry, then please visit my website on www.hanbitshow.com. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.